Delamay.
Well, I know it's possible.
Yeah, it's just kind of changing it. They're trying to come to these for a long time, but I keep getting the notifications when it was and then it being really so it's after work. Just trying to get here.
Wow.
Well, no, my son is probably a little older. But, yeah, he's in Arizona. So this is all me.
But at least you have that time to find out what you're
But you know, they say for a season, which means binge watching, they put all of those, which is like 39 episodes. No way.
What are you writing now?
Well, I'm writing them out. Still, I'm just here's what would really help. If I had like an argument or somebody
Oh, really?
I just need somebody who's invested in Kim, that scene wouldn't really work. You want to create an emotional book. Then I found
I think there's one word that I left out, and it's like crazy idea that's just literally not out there.
Take my ideas, okay, how would you make it? Really where the audience learns.
That's just another experience.
That's an infinite wealth.
So we're going to get started in a minute, but feel free to help yourselves to pizza, beer, cupcakes, all courtesy of Twitch, so help yourselves. And we'll get started shortly.
I'll give everyone a chance to get some food. Ken?
Yeah, well, I think we worked it. I didn't audio.
I was going through a hard time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Is that charger you guys provide? It's there and I'm just using it. This is mine, so I'm sure.
You're welcome to use it. Or the other thing is, if you sit down and slide a little water, you're just going to occasionally come over and tap.
Probably just occasionally come over and tap. I mean, that's it's mostly visual
Okay.
slide stuff.
Yeah, that's fine. So, yeah, I mean, because we can get a podium for it, but it sounds like we could just have it on this table. So
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I was gonna ask like if there was a clicker, if I needed anything like that.
Not a clicker, but there's yes, there's not. Yeah. So that is the issue line, and should put it up on both of these screens. So it's. You can always just set it on this table too if you want to.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't want to stand in front of that. It's my memory.
Yeah.
So I was gonna like
Yeah. Yeah.
not blocking everybody.
So have you been running this?
2 years. Like 3, 4 years. Yeah, well, it's not consistent with every month, but most months. So, yeah, it's easier on Twitch and things like that. Helps to set the costs and such.
Yeah, good. If you introduce
Yeah, yeah, it's perfect. Yeah.
so can them
You ready for this?
Yeah,
Done this before.
we try to help developers.
yeah, totally. Yeah, no, I get it.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, no, that sounds great. Yeah, I will, yeah, I'll do that. So I have like a little 5-minute intro. Kick it over to you.
Here or there?
Oh, right. I mean, you can be there or you can be there.
What's up?
He does the intro, why don't you just sit up?
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, see.
Yeah, Michael's here. Yeah, I've been chatting with him for a while. So, yeah. Just interesting. Kick it off that package constantly. Pretty simple, you know, and then I'll feel a little spiel about like what developer success means and like what my job is. So that's kind of the introduction. Like, hey, we're here to help you.
I'm actually kind of disappointed that I've gotten 0 embeds really hoping, I was hoping that the campaign would give me some death threats, so I had a real Twitter thread. I got no death threats, just like bang.
Right. So I guess we're gonna go ahead and get started here. Sorry for the wait getting into the room, but there was some, scheduling overlap here. So we're all in now, and it seems to be going smoothly. So thanks to everyone for coming tonight to the Austin Mobile and Indie Game Dev Meetup. Just have a few quick announcements, and then we'll get on to the speakers for the night. So first of all, these events happen on the 4th Tuesday of every month here at Capital Factory. So if you're not already following the meetup group on meetup.com, go ahead and do that so you'll get announcements about future months. We're pretty consistent having it generally every month, so just keep an eye out there for announcements. Also, sort of a quick note, I don't know if you haven't been here previously, you are able to actually park in the parking garage below the Omni Hotel for a discounted rate of $5 for the night, as long as you arrive after 6 p.m. and you get a validation ticket from the people at the front desk, the Capital Factory people up here. So it's a pretty good deal if the weather's bad or raining or something like that. So something to keep in mind. Also, just quickly, I would love to open up the floor for announcements from the community at this point. So, kind of we typically will go around and give people a chance to say a couple words if they're looking to hire for a particular position related to game development, or if they're looking for a collaborator for a game dev project, or if there's some kind of event that's game dev related coming up in the community. So this would be a good time for folks to stand up if they have anything in particular. Any takers?
Nobody's hiring. Not a single person is hiring anywhere.
Well, actually,
I'm hiring.
we're gonna get to them, and they actually do have some hiring announcements to make. So so that then moves me on to the next segment of the announcements, which is so just wanted to thank obviously the sponsors for tonight. First of all, Capital Factory for letting us use the space. Always great, you know, to be in here. Great facilities and whatnot. So give them a thanks when you're on your way out. And also, obviously, thanks to Twitch for sponsoring the night, helping to cover the cost of food and drinks, and hooking us up with the great speakers for tonight, which include Dallas Tester and Michael Molinari. And I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation.
Close enough.
So yeah, we're super excited about the speakers. And so actually, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off in a second to Ken Demarest from Twitch, so he can kind of give you all a couple words about Twitch and set things up for Dallas, the speaker who is from their organization. But also, quickly, so as far as the schedule for tonight, you know, we're going to have maybe 45-ish minutes of talks, and then after that there maybe a few like 15-20 minutes of Q&A. And then after that, you're welcome to hang out in the room, talk, socialize, whatever. But we do need to be out by 9 p.m. so that the Capital Factory staff people can go home because they want to, not be here all night. So anyway, so that's the main thing we have to keep in mind. But other than that, after everyone's done, feel free to hang out, have more food and drinks and that kind of thing. So I guess without further ado, I will hand stuff off now to Ken Demarest, who is the
Director of Product Development for Developer Success. It's
yeah.
long.
He
It's
said,
long.
he told me the title, but it was too long to remember. So anyway, he's going to tell you a few words about Twitch and take it away.
Thanks, man. So I'm Ken. Hi. That's not necessary at all. So I joined Twitch back in June of 2016 as Director of Product Development. Twitch was built on the ethic of making sure that broadcasters got what they needed so they could customize the experience of their viewers. And that propelled Twitch for a long time to get acquired eventually for about $970 million by Amazon, which of course was fantastic for Twitch. About a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago, it became increasingly obvious that developers were going to play a really critical role. So the developer success team was formed, and in order to expand quickly, the Austin Developer Success Office was founded. That's what I did back in June. We're looking to create a new kind of relationship with game developers. We want to empower game developers. We want game developers to have more opportunities for better analytics about what's going on when players aren't directly on their games. We want game developers to have new kinds of influence and power in the Twitch ecosystem. And as GDC comes up, we'll start making announcements about that. We've got others coming throughout the year. And, shameless plug, we're hiring. We need front-end developers, we need back-end developers, we need experienced DevOps people with a lot of cloud savvy. We need engineering managers, product managers, user experience, the whole gamut. I'm sorry we don't need any 3D rendering people. But everything else, pretty much, we need. So I just wanted to say hi to everybody, let you know the Twitch office in Austin does exist. We give out special shirts. And without further falderall, I'll introduce Dallas, who actually knows how to talk about these things. Thanks, Dallas.
All right. Give me just a second to wake up my laptop. Yes, perfect. All right. As I was introduced twice previously, I'm Dallas Tester. I promise you, it's my real name. It's not a pseudonym. I'm not a tester. I'm a developer advocate for the Developer Success Group here in Austin. You need to get in touch with me. I'm at @DallasInChains on Twitter. And today I'm going to be giving you a very high-level overview of our Twitch developer platform. So as a developer, as a game developer, whether it's web or game, how can you leverage Twitch to make your game a better interaction and have more success on Twitch? So our agenda for today is I'm going to give you an overview of the platform. So at a very high level, what is it that's available to you, how you can leverage that. We'll talk about embeds, which is a way to reuse existing Twitch content and Twitch video, for example, in your website or into your game. We'll talk about Twitch identity, which is a way for you to allow game creators, or rather game users, to use identity inside of your game so they can bring their Twitch login so you don't have to build a login system. We'll talk a little bit about our chat system, which is kind of one of the hallmarks of Twitch. It's one of the biggest interactions that we have. And we'll talk about our PubSub system, which also goes in line with our REST API. And the REST API is really how can you get at the data that people have on Twitch and all the information about that. So there are three kind of important parts of our platform. We talk about all the services that make up the platform, whether that's the API, PubSub, any of those. We think about developer applications and registration. So whenever you become a Twitch developer, you sign up with us, you get a client ID, you send that to our API so we can figure out like what APIs you're using and do proactive outreach. And then of course the developer agreement, which is how to use the data that we provide through our API. Very common developer agreement, terms of service, etc. So what are our development services? Well, kind of at a base level, we have the Kraken API. Kraken is the name of our RESTful API. That's kind of the base. This is most commonly used part of our API, with chat to go along with that. So our chat system is based on IRC. We'll get into a little bit of that. People build chat bots for loyalty, or they build chat bots that see whenever someone subscribes or follows and things of that nature. PubSub, which is a relatively new system. We released it last year. So this is a way to augment our Kraken API in order to make it easier for you to get data directly about things that are happening on Twitch. And then of course Twitch identity. And this is our OAuth provider. So we provide OAuth, allow you to log in with that. You can connect with Twitch, connect those accounts. And so we'll look into that a little bit as well. So as a developer, the first thing you need to do is register a developer application. Very straightforward. Once you log into Twitch, you can go to your settings page, go into connections, you provide some data, which is your redirect URI, which you will use and to redirect the user once they've logged in or given you credentials. We ask for some, application category, so we can, look at our people building a lot of chat bots, where do we want to look at our data and how do we want to invest inside of that API. And of course you can sign up for our mailing list so you can get all the important information about our API. To go along with that, this is an important part of interacting with Twitch, is our developer agreement. I like to call this out specifically because we rewrote it last year to be more user-friendly. It's a lot easier to understand. It's not a lot of legalese. There's a human readable version rather than just a lot of legalese. And I call this out specifically because we take privacy very seriously on Twitch. It's something that we think about a lot as a company. So this is an important part of interacting with our platform. So let's get into our first feature set. The first feature set that we're going to talk about are embeds. And these are easy ways for you to integrate Twitch into a website or into a game. So you don't have to recreate the wheel whenever you want to embed some video or a clip or even live streams. You know, you can do live streams, you can do pre-recorded videos, you can do clips, which are short form content. And then there's also chat embeds, so you don't have to, again, you don't have to recreate the wheel for embedding chat inside of your game or inside of your website, and makes it super straightforward. So the video embed is the first one. There are two forms of our video embed. We have what we call interactive and non-interactive. It's a simple iframe, so you can drop an iframe into the page, and that iframe will bring in directly. This is a broadcaster called Trump. He lives here in Austin, so I'm trying to represent Austin with all of my examples here. And this allows you to take that video content and just drop it straight into your website or into your game, for example. There's a game called Super Fight that does this. They include it inside of their game. It's a Unity game, and they include this video embed in there to showcase people that are actually playing your game. So if I'm in a game, I've logged in, I can go in and see other people that are playing, and because it's a multiplayer game, you can request to join their game. So it's a pretty cool little integration where you can watch someone who's playing, and in real time you could join them or ask to join. Or maybe you go to their stream and say, hey, I want to join, and you send a link to them. In the non-interactive versus interactive embed has a JavaScript API that you can use to control the experience. So for example, you could have a gallery of different places where, or different broadcasters that have your game, that are playing your game, and so in real time you can just set the channel and switch it in like TV guide style. So you can, you know, have people surfing through each of those. And then Clips. Clips is a product that we released mid last year. It's short form content, so 30 to 45 seconds usually. And these are the moments that happen whenever you're watching a stream. And this really allows you to, just like the video embed those short form, very fast content that people want to see on social is a great example. So you could imagine we just released an API that allows you to grab, you know, trending clips, top clips, things of that nature. So you can imagine grabbing all those top clips for your game, putting those into, you know, either your game or into your website if you have a community site for your game, or even just share them to social. Like if you have a, you know, your game has a social presence and you're interacting with your community, you know, create some buzz that way. Twitch identity. Twitch identity is our ability to tie accounts together. So you can get a no-auth token from us that says, hey, I have, on behalf of this user, I can take these actions. And you can use that to log them in. So a lot of folks use this as a login system. Other integrations include, for example, Bungie uses this. We'll get into that in just a little bit. About Bungie uses it to augment their community, so you can see all your broadcasters that you're following, and they go in and say, okay, are those broadcasters playing Destiny? So I want to show all the Destiny streams, for example. So what does this look like? This allows, Twitch identity really allows gamers to bring their identity with them wherever they go, right? So you no longer have to worry about having this login system that you set up. You can actually just use the identity that they already have on Twitch and allow them to carry that forward with them. And you can imagine this in, you know, whenever they share it to social, or if they're sharing any sort of like activity, like you can see on Twitch where it says, oh, they're streaming a game, for example. And you can authorize these using standard OAuth. We're an OAuth 2 provider. And you know, we have a bunch of different scopes if you're familiar. And we have two different flows for that. We have the implicit, which is like a client-side flow, so if you're doing it inside of a website. And then we have the authorization code flow, which is more for the server side. So you think about your game integrations here, where you can get a code and in real time request for a token based on that user. And so this is Bungie's integration, as a matter of fact. So they do two things, as I said before. They use this for their community side in order to show that who on your following list, if I'm a Twitch user, I can log in, I play Destiny, they show who on your following list is actually playing. They could also use that with the Clips API and get all of the games that you're following and get the clips about that. So that's other integration points there, using the same scopes. And then they also, if you start streaming, they can broadcast that out via Bungie's social network to let folks know that you're actually streaming. So anybody on your Bungie friends list they can let them know, hey, they're streaming, go watch them. And so it drives more people back into that community and back into the Destiny directory. And they also, whenever they released Rise of Iron, they, instead of just Xbox and PSN, you can actually log in with Twitch, which was kind of cool. It was really cool to see their integration where all of a sudden they were like, all right, well, you can use your Twitch identity for this and then tie it all together into a Bungie account. And so they use that as a mechanism to keep those two tied together, as well as like user acquisition, because tons of folks already have Twitch accounts. And then of course you can use this for application access. This was a game called Streamline, broke by Proletariat. They used it to, in this case, if you look at the UI here, they actually allow you to interact with the game in real time. So in this case, you can spend this virtual currency that they came up with to make everybody have moon boots, so everybody jumps higher in real time in the game. So the game that you're watching and that you can have an effect on, which is kind of cool. So, and we'll see, Michael will tell you more about how he did that in his game Choice Chamber. My OF flows are in the wrong place, sorry. Chat. So chat is a very large part of Twitch. If you've ever watched Twitch, it's probably the biggest thing that folks interact with. And developers actually can use it for multiple things. Voting in real time. You can use it for loyalty programs. If you look at TinyBuild, they created a whole Tiny Rewards system where as you watch the games that are in their basically catalog of games, you can build up these rewards over time, and that allows you to then use those items to get in-game items. So if you think about the free-to-play model, you could actually use this to say, okay, if you've watched 10 hours of my game, of anybody streaming my game, then I'm going to reward you with a bunch of currency that you can then go spend, and then they entitle it back to their game. So one question is why chat? It's a primary interaction with the community. This is what chat looks like. For those of you that haven't seen it, often, depending on the size of the stream you're watching, it moves much faster than this. This is a particularly cool moment during an Overwatch tournament. And the important part about chat is that building that community and that sense of community actually helps your game, right? It helps with retention. There is a great blog post on the Twitch blog about how interaction with streamers and interaction with communities and watching on Twitch leads to retention in games. I would encourage you to go read it. It's by Danny Hernandez. It's a really excellent look at a large swath of data. And there's also the side of inclusion here. So whenever folks are watching, they like to feel included. You see this with overlays. You see this whenever someone subscribes or follows, and the pop up on the screen whenever they cheer on Twitch. You'll see all of this, and they love that recognition. That helps build this kind of flywheel where they will re-engage, and it leads to re-engagement with your game as well. And then, of course, again, the point systems, there's that motivation, of like, I want to engage in this community, I want to watch this broadcaster, I want to watch this game, because at the end of that, I'll receive some sort of incentive at the end of that. So what is chat like? Keeping it old school, it's IRC. So we actually build it in an IRC compatible way, but due to our scale and all the things that we've added on to it, we're not fully compatible with IRC. We realized as we grew very quickly that we needed tons of things to help with scale, subscriptions, all those things, and so we've taken the IRC RFC and modified it to our own needs. This is WebSockets. You can also do it over WebSockets. So you don't have to connect directly via IRC using a socket. You can also use WebSockets if you're using a web-based integration here. You log in using OAuth. So in keeping with the Twitch identity, you can get a scope that's called chat login, and that allows you to basically log in directly to chat. So there's no, you're not taking a user's password, which would be terrible. You're not taking a user's password, you're just on behalf of them logging in. of course, chatbots. This is a very, very common use case. This is our Mr. Roboto, or Mr. Destructoid, rather. And we see a lot of chatbots. This is a very common use case where you can watch chat, you can see what's happening, you can figure out like who's subscribing, and then of course you can help moderate. Moderation is a big part of chatbots. Tons and tons of moderation chatbots, and there's a lot of great existing code out there, for Node or for Java or even for games like on the Unity web store. There are plenty of chat integrations there, and of course moderation. As I said, this is like a big part of being a chatbot. They can moderate inside of your channel, so if someone is misbehaving or spamming or whatever, you can use that chatbot to ban them, time them out, and all of that. And of course we have the chat embed. So this is a way that you can actually display chat without having to connect to IRC, intercept messages, parse all the messages, all of that. You can actually just embed this directly if you want more of an experience around just putting it on your website. If you were doing a chatbot, you would need to write some more code that does processing on the back end, but this is what our chat embed looks like. It looks just like the Twitch experience. So there's no real learning curve here for folks that are already using Twitch. PubSub. So PubSub is, again, a system that we just put out last June, I believe it was, with the introduction of cheering. And PubSub allows you to listen for events that are happening on Twitch. So, for example, someone has cheered in a channel, or you think about another one, maybe if someone just received a badge. We give badges inside of chat that are right next to your name that show if you're a subscriber, show if you're a Twitch Prime user, show if you're staff. There's plenty of badges, and so you could imagine using that. Or if someone received a whisper, that's another. We have one-to-one communication via whispers on Twitch, and so you can use this that way that you're not having to constantly pull the API. So this is kind of current state where if you want to get data from Twitch's API, you have to pull it. And every 1 to 3 minutes we refresh all the endpoints in the cache, and so you have to spend all this time over and over and over again saying, hey, is there new data? Hey, is there new data? Hey, is there new data? Pretty tedious for a developer. So the idea with PubSub is that now you can just say, hey Twitch, tell me when something happens. And then we go, and in this case, tell me when someone follows this channel. And then you go, oh, but also tell me when they sub. We want to know those two pieces of information. We don't care about if they got a badge. We don't care about if they cheered or anything else. And then whenever that happens in that channel, we say, hey, guess what? Someone new just subbed, or someone new just followed. And so we send you the data back proactively rather than you having to keep asking us over and over and over again. And then of course, a new follower appears. So this is easily, our data, and all the data inside of our APIs and inside of PubSub are all JSON based. So they're all just JSON payloads, so they're really easy to parse. Loads of frameworks out there, so you don't have to deal with all of that. And the REST API. The REST API is pretty massive. It's got a lot of use. We have continually added to it over the years. We just actually released V5 in December of the API, and we're looking, we're continually adding to this, improving it, making it better, listening to feedback, etc. And so what is Kraken? We call it Kraken, what does that mean? Well, base URL is API Twitch TV/Kraken. It is all over HTTPS or HTTP. JSON, of course, is our data format of choice here, as is very common with a RESTful API. We do versioning via headers right now. So you would send us, our current version is V5. And where you have an accept header where you basically say, hey, give me V5. And we have V3. V4 was kind of this void that never quite existed. I get questions about this all the time. So we have V3 and we have V5 right now. But V3 goes into deprecated status in February, so I don't want to encourage you to use V3. Use V5, please. And all of our endpoints allow JSONP callbacks, so you don't, whenever you make a call to us, we can do that JSONP right back to you. And it makes it super, super easy if you're doing anything like on the web, anything like that. And our API is self-describing, so we give you information about the information that we're returning to you, and so we try to keep that in line as much as we can. And of course, we have endpoints that are gated by OAuth. We don't give carte blanche access to all the data, especially anything that could be considered sensitive. Those are all gated by OAuth tokens and the OAuth flow that I showed earlier. And we do require every time you send a request to our API, you have to identify yourself. That way we know who's calling what APIs. So this was a change that we implemented last year. Before that it was a little Wild West, but no, we got on lock. Cool. So what are our available endpoints? The first is channel feed. So channel feed is the ability to share social updates on Twitch. These appear beneath the video player on the channel page. Basically, you can share clips, you can share videos, you can just share your thoughts for the day. You can think of it like a Twitter timeline. Allow you to share any sort of reactions, the reaction buttons like the heart and all those on Facebook. And then the channels API, this allows you to get information about all the channels on Twitch. So every time a user is created, they all have channels, and so you can get information about their channel when it was created, any sort of subscribers, if they're part of our partner program on Twitch. You can get that information from here. That's gated by OAuth, of course. And then chat APIs. The chat APIs they give you the ability to see information about, basically about chat. So what are the endpoints? What are the chat properties? So any sort of information. Chatter's endpoint is another common one that we use. Games. This allows you to get information about games on Twitch. So whenever you start streaming on Twitch, you set your game and you say, hey, I'm streaming, and you'll end up in that directory. This allows you to search for games. This allows you to see all the information about that game, like how many people are streaming it, for example. So if you're thinking about, you've added your game to Twitch and you want to get information about like how it's doing, you would think, maybe I'll pull that and see, hey, how's my game growing on Twitch, right? So you could think about using that REST API to pull that over time. I seem to have a ghost space here for some reason. Maybe it'll appear soon. And then the ingests. Ingests are the endpoints where you can send video. So if you were thinking about a direct stream to Twitch experience from your game, where they wouldn't have to set up OBS or XSplit or anything like that, you could get this endpoint to see where are the ingest servers and where do I send that data. So I can just send the video data directly to those ingest points. And then, of course, search API, you can search for games, you can search for streams, you can search for channels. So the distinction here between channels and streams is that streams are live. That's what's happening now. They are online right now, streaming actively, whereas channels can be online or offline. So that's kind of the distinction here, if you're not familiar with Twitch vernacular. Streams API, speaking of. The Streams API, this allows you to get anything that's live, so current live information. So is Trump live? Is he, how many people is watching? What game is he playing? Any of this information you can get directly from the Streams API. And the Teams API, we have communities of users that have formed into teams, and these teams you would see something like, is playing Hearthstone on, and then the on is like a team. There's another broadcaster here called T-Rex. He lives here in Austin, and he streams on the Wobblers. It's just some name that they came up with, and it's a bunch of Destiny streamers that all came together, and they made the Wobblers. And then the users API, this allows you to get, of course, user information. And this is, when did they join Twitch? What is their display name? We have this difference between login name and display name. So a display name may be something in an extended language like Korean, and then a login name would just be, in English, for example. So you can set those inside of your settings page. And then video upload. So this is allowing you to take video that wasn't live streamed. So by default, whenever you stream on Twitch, you can save that. You can save that in real time. You can tell us to archive it for up to 60 days. This actually allows you to take a video, produce it, maybe you put some branding on the beginning, anything like that, and upload those directly. You could think about if you're releasing a game, you create a twitch.tv/your game, and then you upload your commercial or trailer for it, right, directly to your channel, and then you could share that out. Hey, there's one of mine. And then video discovery. So I put these in two different categories here. Video discovery actually just allows you to search for videos of a given game or a given popularity, if something is trending, for example. And those are, that basically just allows you to find any videos that might be related to your game or find similar content. And there's my other one. Clips discovery. This is brand new. This just came out 2 weeks ago. Clips discovery, this is what allows you to find clips, which are kind of 30-second short form content that are user generated. So clips, whenever you're watching a stream and something cool happens, there's a button that you can click on the player and it generates this 30-second buffer. And then from there you can actually share that out. And so clips discovery allows you to see what clips about your game are trending, which ones are the most popular over time, over a given time period. Maybe it's a day, week, month. We have all of that data and we allow you to surface all that. So you can think about, maybe a clip got super, super popular on Reddit and you could use this, your community manager or, your social manager could actually use this to find that clip, reshare it on Twitter, all that. So you get that flywheel there. So what are my next steps? Where do I go from here? Our developer website is dev.twitch.tv. There you will find all of the documentation about all the things that I just talked about. We keep all of our documentation there. We talk through like events we're going to be at. Our Twitter feed is there if you want to take a look at that. We also have a very active developer forums, which is discuss.dev.twitch.tv. If you post there, you'll probably talk to me. 99% of the time it'll be me. And then we also have our Twitch developer Twitter, which is @TwitchDev. So anytime you need any help, that will be me. And feel free to reach out to me directly as well. As I said, it's @DallasInChains on Twitter. And now I'm going to let Michael from Studio Bean talk about his integration with Twitch.
So do you think we should do a Q&A for you in between?
I was going to do it after.
Oh yeah, sure, that's cool.
Yeah, I figured they can ask us both questions since
Great.
they'll have his insight.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dallas.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for having me here. That's me, Michael Molinari. My company, Studio Bean, it's mostly just me who comes up with these strange games. But first off, is anyone familiar with Choice Chamber already? Rusty is. We got 2, 3. Cool. So this is a game designed for Twitch. And this is one of the first ones. Oops, let me do that. This is one of the first ones that came out. I was working on it end of 2013. Seems like so long ago.
Yeah.
This is before the big Twitch Plays Pokemon phenomenon and all those things. But it came about when I wanted to combat this problem on Twitch where the streamer would say, please don't help me play the game. Because they want to play it themselves, especially if it's a puzzle game. They don't want to have anything ruined. And they actually have the rule, no backseat gaming, as they like to call it. And so that's really weird that everyone's watching someone play this game, but you can't talk about it. You can talk about anything else but the thing you want to talk about right in front of your face. So I was like, let's make a game where the chat is encouraged to play along with the streamer, so they can not feel, like they have to hold back what they want to say. They can just go in and play, and you're all playing together no matter how many viewers there are. So I wanted to have it limitless, so not just for 32 people like a first-person shooter. So that's where the idea came from, this little cloud, this little thought. And so I was like, how do I do that? And at the time, I didn't know about the API. Technically, I still don't. I have someone else on my team who does that. So he implemented that for me. But at the time, my best solution was probably the worst one, which was to use ocular character recognition, OCR for short, which is where you have a live version of the chat room in the game hidden, and it's scanning every single line pixel by pixel and looking for individual letters and then piecing those back together into words to find out who said what. So it worked pretty well. I got it working. I had a whole lookup table for every letter and number and stuff. And then one day, during my Kickstarter for the game, Twitch decided to update the UI for the chat room, which not only broke the game for me, but for all of the big streamers I sent the game out to already who were supposed to play it to promote the Kickstarter. And so suddenly, none of them can play the game. And I was like, well, this doesn't go very well. Luckily, the person I mentioned before wrote the API integration for me, because he's like, you shouldn't be using OCR. Here, just have this, just in case. I was like, yeah, whatever. And then I was like, oh, thank goodness he already had it. So live on Twitch, I was fixing the code during my Kickstarter to get this thing working. And sure enough, not only could I just see what someone said, I had access to a whole lot of other things, such as who said it. That was really important. Let me just make sure I don't skip over it. Yeah, so I got all the things from the Twitch chat itself, which was their username and their message, which is super important for this type of game. As you can see, there's a poll on the side here that's everyone say hello. This is actually my way of testing, are we actually connected to Twitch, So everyone just say something, which is hello in a bunch of languages and street slang from America. And you can see all the names popping up. So this is actually live. These are 54 people already who have said hello, and their little speech bubbles pop up. It's a cool way to have them interact with the game before you've really gotten started. So also we can get their color of their username, which seems like, oh, who cares? But look, this is everyone's username colors as well as what they said. So they can look for my blue konnichiwa, or kind of a teal, or whatever that is. And they can see, and that comes into play later, like there's another room we'll get to where they're actually building a bridge, and you can see the color of their bridge piece. And we've actually updated since this screenshot, but eventually you'll see their usernames, and you can blame the person who's screwing you over on purpose. We can also look at their status, so if they're a moderator or a subscriber, and we can give them extra benefits for being someone special in the chat. So for instance, on these polls, let's see, we'll go another slide here. I'm just going to skip around. This poll here, you can see that these are questions that the chat is interacting with, and they're deciding all these factors in the game. So someone who's a moderator or a subscriber can actually have more weight to the vote and kind of sway things one way or the other. Another cool thing we can do in the Twitch chat is looking at events that happen, such as when someone subscribes or resubscribes, because if you're not familiar, subscribing is actually paying real money, $4.99 a month, to the streamer. And that means you're elevated. You can use special emotes just for that channel anywhere on Twitch. And so I wanted to celebrate that. I'm like, hey, let's have the person who just gave money to the streamer, let's have them have an even better experience in the game. And so what we came up with was to have the person appear as a little robot with their username so you can see who they are, and they actually interact with the person using AI commands from the chat room. And it's this really cool thing. You can have a whole bunch of them swarming around you if you're a popular streamer, which is really cool because for a big streamer, you may not even get a chance to play a multiplayer game with them ever. You just get to chat and they'll never read your message because all they do is read the $10 donations that keep coming in every 7 seconds. So this way you can actually see your name on the screen and it's this amazing moment like, hey mom, look, I'm on Twitch, whatever. So that's cool. And it works for smaller channels too, where you have one or two, kind of like my channel. So it works really well. We also have a way to get around the video delay on Twitch, which is not a feature, but it's something that everyone deals with. It's about 15, 20 seconds, sometimes 60 seconds if they're watching from another part of the world and have a really poor connection. So these polls are for 1 minute, and these little circles tick down, and that's 1 minute. And so sometimes people will see the question pop up, and on my computer where I'm streaming it, the question's already done, so their input doesn't matter, but they don't know because it's a minute delayed. So I was like, how do we get around this? One way, design-wise, was to actually not count down the timer until at least one person has inputted their vote, which means for the first 20 seconds, no one's voting, and then once the first one comes in. So that gives them a little bit of buffer. But on top of that, we made a chat bot, which is very simple. All it is whenever a question appears, it'll spit that question and the multiple choice answers into the chat, and then everyone can see it, as long as it's not a big channel. If it's a big channel, it's just going to scroll by, you won't see it. But for most of the channels who play, they play for an audience of 1 to 25, 50 people, and you can keep up with it that way. So that's very helpful. We have other things that we use the chatbot for, like special moments, like there's a room captain who's one person from the chat room who has control of these Hunger Games style care packages that come down, and you can troll the player or help them out, whatever you want to do, but it's an unmarked package, so it's up to them to open it. But we announce immediately, this person's a room captain, so you don't have to wait a minute to drop your first bomb, not telling them it's a bomb. But you can know immediately by reading the chat. We had another pretty cool feature that I wish we had during the launch. So this was like 8 months later, but I realized that like the top streamer who ever played this game by the name of Lyric he played to about 45,000 concurrent viewers, and people come and go every second, so who knows how many hundreds of thousands of people saw the game, and people are subscribing and having all the little robots flying around with him, and then for all of that magical moment to happen throughout the hour or two that he played, one person bought the game, Lyric. So I was like, I kind of missed out on as far as keeping this as a sustainable business model. I didn't think this one through very well. So I came up with this better idea, too late, 8 months after launch, but I implemented it where someone has to subscribe to my channel, and if they do so, they'll get extra powers that they can use on anyone else's channel on Twitch. And the interesting thing there is that I have to have the game know that they're a subscriber to my channel. Now, you used to be able to look up someone's username and see every subscriber that they were a part of, and you've since taken that away, like 2 years ago or so.
Yeah.
I think because it's a privacy concern, you can see who's wealthy and subscribing to thousands of people. So now there's still a way to do it, and so with the special commands for proving that you're a subscriber to my channel, you have to actually put one of my emotes after the command itself. And the email will only turn into the picture itself if you are a subscriber to my channel, otherwise it'll stay as plain text. So it's a simple way of proving that you are a subscriber without having to go through any extra OAuth. It just works right in the chat room just like that. And just doing that increased my subscribers from, it was a growth of about 750% in about a few months' time. So that was pretty cool. And I never see their faces. They subscribe, they never say hi to me. They come to my channel, they subscribe, and they go back to the person where they want to troll them and mess with their game. So that's most of the things that happen in Choice Chamber. We had these challenge rooms. This one's where you build a bridge. The room starts off with just a lava pit, and the chat room builds the bridge one piece at a time, and usually screws with you. This one is doable, but sometimes there's like a pit you can't jump past, which is why we had this detonate X button on the side just to tell them, hey, can I please get across the room? And sometimes you'll be there a while, but at least they're having fun with you. So we have these challenge rooms because having all these polls on the side constantly is really cool because they're deciding, what weapons you have, what enemies are coming, if they're going to give you a heart when you're on your last heart, or they're going to be jerks and not give you anything. Sometimes the chest opens up and it says nothing. You're like, all right, well, that's going to be it. Thanks, everyone, for the game over. So we added these challenge rooms that are real-time problems that the chat needs to solve together. So for here, they have to build the bridge. There's other rooms that are kind of like Tetris, where they have to build their way out without crushing you. So that's kind of a fun little interactive thing. A bunch of little rooms like that. And we're trying to make it feel more like everyone is together, and not just a bunch of a hive mind that's deciding on a poll, right? Because if you have just a poll, no matter how many people are viewing, 1 or 45,000, it's just going to be one answer at the end. So we didn't like how that didn't spotlight people. Everyone just felt like, your vote didn't matter. And so that's why we added the room captain and these challenge rooms, etc. So we wanted to get around that problem in our next game, which is called City Stream. And that launched in January of last year, like 1 year ago. And it only lasted for 2 months. It was a live game that we had that was only playable from the Twitch chat. No one had to download anything other than Chrome or Firefox to play the game. In their browser, no extra logins are needed because you just play from the Twitch chat. And this is just a game running on my computer in my living room. And people come to that one channel to play. So now I've taken care of that monetization problem where all the money's going to all these other streamers. So now you come to my channel to play. And it's free to play, of course, but if you want to get extra perks and things, you can donate to the channel or subscribe. And there's no person in the corner anymore playing. There's kind of just the players from the chat. Like, I can't even play with a controller from my house. You can only play from the chat room. So this is this really cool idea to get everyone to feel special. And how do we make them feel special? This is what the game started to look like on day one, where there's one little unbuilt building in a forest and everything else is locked. By the end of, about 2 months, they had built an entire city. And you can see a lot of the players, all these dots in different shapes everywhere. Lots of other things unlocked. And we wanted to have every single person have something to do. And we did this all through the Twitch chat. So we had them give all their commands from the Twitch chat, and the game would update all of their player positions, and each person had their own inventory and status that was saved locally on my machine. So we held thousands of different player data as they came back from day to day or even week to week. But new technology had come around by this point, such as the Whisper, which was still in beta at the time, unless it's still in beta now. Like, is everything still in beta at all times? So the Whisper, as you know, is like a little IM window separate from the Twitch chat, kind of like in Facebook or GChat, where you can have a one-on-one conversation. So I was like, this is perfect, because everyone's going to want to know, how much wood do I have? Can I build the thing? Or what's my EXP? How much until I level up? And I don't want to spit all that out into the Twitch chat, because it's already hard enough to read with all their commands. So let's have the Whisper bot have this little private thing that's just for that one person. So we had that. as an idea, and we're like, this works great, except for the fact that we'd be whispering to hundreds of people, possibly per minute. And there's a little thing called spam filters on Twitch that prevents that from happening. So we got permission from Twitch to get whitelisted, so we wouldn't be marked as a mass whispering bot, which we were. So we were, but they let us. They let us do it, which is really cool. And it still has its own limits, but nowhere near what we would hit as a threshold. So that worked really well, where people would ask you questions and it would spit it back. And I could keep track of how many thousands it was sending out every day and making sure I don't get close to that threshold. Otherwise, I would ask Twitch for another permission level. And then an interesting thing is this is supposed to be a live game that runs for hours every day. We wanted it to be 24 hours, but unfortunately, we had a little a problem where, well, you can see the robot here. This is our little narrator. His name is Beep, the robot. And right now he's spewing hearts out of his head because he's in love with the moon, apparently. But he was supposed to be AI-driven. He would talk to the players and keep them entertained, because who wants to just stare at a city for hours and hours on end, especially when you can go anywhere else on Twitch and see someone's head in front of a green screen who you can connect with. So we wanted someone playing this game to connect with something. So we made the robot so we wouldn't have to sit in front of the camera for 24 hours every day. And so we weren't really able to get him to have AI conversations, especially with our 6 weeks we had to build the whole game. So we were like the man behind the curtain, where we would just take shifts throughout the day, like on the computer, talking back with everyone. And we would give them back really fun, witty responses and tie it in with the theme of the game, and they could ask us riddles and we would still answer them correctly, and like, wow, that's amazing. But sometimes we want to like go out and have a dinner for once and actually eat and stay alive. But this game still needs to talk back to them. Little Beep has to talk back. So I made a little thing in the Whisper logic where if I send a message or anyone else on the team sends a message with a certain command, it'll actually send that to my game back at home. And the cool thing is I can do that all from the Twitch app. So I don't need to write my own iPhone app that's just this little thrown together thing. I just use the Twitch app, go into a whisper to the game, and say, hey, do this as I see them talking in the chat. And he'll just talk back with a 20-second delay, of course, but I can go to a restaurant and have a meal for a little bit. Sometimes, and I'm like waiting for my meal to come, I'm just like staring, and everyone's like, can you please? I'm like, no, so hold on. So I don't know. So that's some of the major points of things that we put into these two games, at least. We've done a lot of other experiments on the side. I think there's maybe about a dozen or so things we put together, both applications and games. But these are the major releases that we've had. So that's basically how we've used a lot of the Twitch features in our games.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. Q&A.
Yeah, so questions for either of them?
I have a question. Why didn't you let a community member control the robot?
Let a community. So a problem with my games notoriously is that they're poorly coded, and they crash pretty often. And so someone in control of something that's not working correctly from somewhere else in the world would not have worked very well.
Don't want to do that?
No. Perhaps if we were to keep expanding the game, but it only ran for the 2 months as we were working on it. So we did have moderators though. They were helping people who were new to the game late. Once it was a full city, there's always commands and things to do. Someone's very overwhelmed the first time coming in. So we had the moderators. They had a special command they could use where they could have the person's username and the word help, and it would spit out this little thing like, hey, whatever, welcome to the channel. Go to this website for a little manual that introduces you to everything one by one. So, yeah.
So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
I was gonna say, so for your first game, you encountered that problem, and so was it successful? Did you meet your goal as far as the Kickstarter?
Oh yes, the first game, Kickstarter was met. About halfway through the Kickstarter, we were 1/3 funded,
Okay.
and then I got an email from someone at Twitch that said, congratulations, but we think you can do better. So whatever amount is remaining on this date in the future, we're going to pay for the other half. And so that announcement itself went public on every news website, and all it said was Twitch funds game. And everyone was sent to my Kickstarter, and it got funded that day.
That's amazing.
So many thanks to Twitch for making that happen.
I wasn't there. I'm not taking any credit. What was your question?
Yeah. Did you open source any of this stuff to interact with the chat, or is all part of your IP?
We haven't released anything because it belongs to the person who wrote it for me. and it's really up to him if he wants to release. He told me he didn't want it to go public until Choice Chamber launched, and that's, I mean, it's been a year and a half now, so I don't know. Maybe I can talk to him and have him. It's designed actually just to work with Flash. I don't know if that'll immediately make you say no thank you. But yeah, it has all the chat readability, including now we can read cheers, so we can see bits. And actually, it's not new. It's not that new, so we can't see the new cheer modes. We can't see that yet.
Mhm.
I can see the amount, but that's not
Yeah.
it. So.
So for Dallas, I guess, so other than Michael, whose game obviously used Twitch in a super creative, interesting way, what are some other examples of other developers or companies that have done unusual or very effective things with Twitch integration?
The first one that comes to mind is Tiny Build. They created a game called One Troll Army. They did a really interesting way. So they created this game. They're a pretty small developer. They created One Troll Army, and they said, you Twitch chat control all of the things fighting the troll, right? So they're like goblins versus one giant troll who's trying to destroy your settlement. And so they said, you Twitch chat are going up against our developers. And if you beat us, every time you beat us, we're gonna knock $1 off the price. Up to and including the game being free. Within hours, the game was free. Twitch chat destroyed them. And it was all like, it was very similar to actually his integration where it showed the name of the villager, the little guy, and they were building things, and they were fighting off the troll and all that. And so you just have this dev going like this on stream, and it's like midnight his time, and he's like, oh my god, and like the game ended up being free. And so they released it for free. But that was kind of their way to get interest in the game. So that's the first one I think of. That was last year. Some other. I'm trying to think of some other
Punch
good.
Club?
Punch Club is another one, also by Tiny Build.
Also by Tiny Build.
Let's see. There's also
Legend of
Super
Dungeon?
Fight. Yeah, that one too. Super Fight is another one where you can it streams directly to Twitch, so they actually built streaming directly in, and there's actually a physical version of this game. It's a physical card game that you can play, and so it's you produce two good things about a superhero, and then your opponent gives you one bad thing to try to negate that superhero, right? And so you can have up to 4 broadcasters at a time, and you have all this back and forth, and then Twitch chat votes on which one was the winner. So so there's a couple others. What was the one you were mentioning?
Legend of Dungeon.
Yeah, Legend of Dungeon.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There's been a lot of games that have had mild Twitch interaction added in. Kind of like a Me Too, but like big profile games like Tomb Raider on Xbox had a big thing.
Yep.
A lot of games just have it added on, right? It's not needed. You can play the game without it, but they kind of added in. Cluster Truck had a cool thing added in, where the developers of the game would just sneak in anonymously into your chat room while you're playing their game and just start messing with the game because they had special commands that only they could do. That cranks the game up to 100 and everything's like psychedelic rainbows and there's explosions everywhere, and then they would just leave.
Yeah. So those are kind of interesting. That's also Tiny Build. They are very big on Twitch integration because they find that it helps create that kind of flywheel of engagement, and so they find that integration brings more people in and is more inclusive, and so they have basically said we'll always have some Twitch integration in our games. So
How did you come up with the idea? Were you inspired by Twitch Plays Pokemon or anything like that?
For Choice Chamber, I got the idea before Twitch Plays Pokemon came out. So I got the idea December of 2013, and I started making prototypes and streaming it on Twitch. And then it was February of 2014, 3 months later, that Twitch Plays Pokemon came out. So maybe they're watching my stream and never gave me credit, but maybe it's just two people with the same idea around the same time.
yeah, absolutely.
Calculus.
I'm not sure how applicable this is to your industry, but I know with a lot of technology across the board, if it's a month old, it's outdated kind of concept. So when you're providing all of these different services to game developers, they're implementing that in their game, and I know that you had mentioned you kind of had that problem of one change on Twitch's end and then it messed everything up. How do you kind of guard against that moving into the future when you're developing new services to offer?
Part of that is also why we exist, why Dev Success exists, is we now commit to a certain amount of time for support. So for example, we wouldn't deprecate, we wouldn't change chat dramatically without at least 3 to 6 months heads up. And so a lot of that is and then of course versioning. So with our API, for example, the reason we went from v3 to v5 is because v5 was a massive change. Like it changed all the URLs to the API, like it was a big change, and we are supporting that until 2018. So like, I mean, you're talking about, we announced it in December or November of 2016, so you have a year and a half to make that transition. So as a company, we've matured in that regard, in that we see developers, as Ken was saying earlier, we see developers as a big part of our platform. I mean, game developers are going to be a big part of that, and so we are getting into better practices of like, what does it mean to deprecate an API? What does it mean to change an API? And like, that's the fight that I fight every day, is like, don't change this API because you're going to break stuff. So that's why Dev Success exists. So we have, and we will have very like clearly defined, this is what a deprecation will look like. Like, this is the first time we've actually ever deprecated a version of our API. We have v1, v2, v3, v4, and v5 right now, like today. And we're removing v1 and v2 in February. It's the first time we've ever removed versions of our API, and we're deprecating v3. And so this is like a new practice for us as a company. And so we're trying to get into where we can say, we will give you a year, which a year is about industry standard, like a year's heads up if we're going to deprecate and remove something. And so we're just trying to follow those industry standards.
So then each of the developers would just need to update their...
Yep, and we do proactive outreach. I mean, we have all sorts of stuff. We have a Twitter account, we have our email list, we do direct outreach to partners as well, to say, hey, like, this is changing, this is a big change, we blog about it, we have tons of stuff. So yeah, so we're certainly getting into a practice of that, where we are proactively telling people, like, we're gonna break your stuff, please fix it. And we also, we're also very data-driven. Like, Twitch is an enormously data-driven company. The blog post that I mentioned earlier by Danny Hernandez is a testament to that. He also wrote another great blog post about why I'm teaching Twitch how to use data, basically, which was a follow-up, and like how we gather data and like use that to inform our decisions. That is also something that I look at a lot, is like, what does the usage look like and who's using it? Like I said before, we know who's using the endpoints, so we can proactively say, man, you're really hitting this a lot, like, what can we do to help you? Or like, hey, we're deprecating that, please fix your integration. So we also do a lot of that proactively as well.
This is kind of a question for both of you guys, but I feel like there are certain kinds of, so aside from the games that use Twitch integration in like a super creative way like yours, just the ones that are more like, hey, I encourage people to live stream this. There are certain kinds of games and types of game designs that seem to work better for that kind of audience and that use case than others. So could you guys speak briefly to what those are? Because there might be some people here who don't want to like go commit to like the full on, like, hey, I'm going to do all this crazy chat, like, voting and stuff like that, but I just want to make a game that people will be excited to stream on Twitch. But what kinds of games seem to be most successful in that regard?
I think that, I think about Dead by Daylight. This is a game that came out of nowhere last year and became a huge hit on Twitch.
What was the name of it?
Dead by Daylight. The idea is that there is one monster, which you are like Jason or Freddy Krueger, something like that, right? And there are 4 survivors. These are all live people who are playing each of these, right? And you can join a streamer's game. That was like all they did, right? It wasn't anything beyond that. It was really, how do I join this game and how do I hook people up through this game? They were massively successful. They came out of nowhere. They had this huge booth at PAX Prime, and I was like, wow, I can't believe it. The fundamental thing about that is that it was good for an audience to watch. It didn't have much to do with the Twitch integration. It had everything to do with being a solidly designed game, which, that's a hard thing to do in the first place. I worked on Connect Star Wars, I know. And then the other side of that is like something that's easy to watch. If you think about, I look at Overwatch as a good example. Overwatch was really hard to watch on Twitch, but it's been successful because they've iterated and they made good camera decisions. It doesn't have much to do with that Twitch integration as much as like solid game design. I don't think that implementing Twitch is going to make you massively more like successful, but it can definitely it's a force multiplier, right? If your game is good and people can watch it and it's watchable, it's going to force multiply your reach by a lot. So I don't know if you have more to say on that.
Yeah, usually the reason people watch a stream on Twitch is because they like the person playing. First and foremost, they'll be very loyal. I don't care what he or she plays, I'm just going to watch it. If you're just browsing for something that's interesting to you, high-level skill is interesting. Someone who's just skillful at the game itself, even if it's not a modern first-person shooter, like someone's really good at speedrunning or playing puzzle games from the 80s or whatever that may be. The one thing I found that doesn't work super well, and there's always exceptions to everything, but music games or rhythm games where you don't have a chance to stop and talk to your chat, like Guitar Hero or DDR, whatever those, and people watching someone play on DDR on 2 pads with just doing handstands, like that's an exception. But someone who wants to be talked to by the streamer, like you have to wait 3 to 5 minutes between every song, and they'll only read 1 or 2, and they'll go back to their song. Whereas most other games that exist, you can just stop moving forward or stop doing something. And like even Rocket League, that needs all of your attention when you're playing, has goals so often that you can stop and read the chat during the replay that keeps happening, kind of do things like that. So keeping that in mind, and I had a music game, that's where I learned this. I was like, why are people, they play it once and they stop, and then the chat's like, oh, it's a cool game, but, can you play something else? And things just weren't driving. Maybe it was just my game. But I've been paying attention. I'm seeing a lot of games where you don't get a break. That makes a big change for as far as who's going to be interested in it.
Yeah. Any other questions?
You mentioned that, I think it was Choice Chamber you were talking about. You were saying it didn't really translate into a lot of game sales, having a bunch of people watching it being streamed on
Sure.
Twitch. Do you think that generalizes to other games that get streamed on Twitch, or is there any information, I guess, about how, having a bunch of people watching someone play that game translates into game sales, if it does necessarily, or?
So the stats change all the time, but there are, let's just say, 100 million people who watch Twitch.
Yep.
And every month there are about 2 million active streamers, people actually broadcasting.
Yep.
And then you factor in how many people play games on Steam and other digital distribution services, and you realize that Twitch, or games like Choice Chamber that were designed for a streaming audience on Twitch, is a very niche thing. I knew this going in, that I would only have, at most, 2 million people, which is a lot, but it's always 0.13% of everyone who you're going to get. And so I knew this going in, and as much as I made at the first big, bold, bulleted point on the game page, like, this works, this is designed for Twitch, you can play it offline, but it's not a very fun experience. It's designed for live streaming. And that Choice Chamber on Steam has all these negative reviews that says, oh, not fun because I don't stream. People just don't read, of course. They just look at the trailer and say, oh, that looks fun. So that said, there's not very many games like Choice Chamber that heavily use the Twitch chat like that. A lot of Tiny Builds games, Choice Chamber, and very few others. Most games are still playable without any Twitch. You can turn off the Twitch interaction, not worry about it. So it's not a huge issue for most developers. That is something I'm still curious about, how that's going to expand going forward.
Alice?
Yep.
In that same blog post that
Yep.
Alice referred to earlier?
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Yeah, sorry, you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, I was gonna say that blog post has actual stats about that exact question. So that exact question is answered in that blog post with data. So that I would highly recommend. I don't have internet. I would highly recommend looking that up. It's a data science post on blog.twitch.tv, and it has exactly that sort of information about how watching and engaging with streamers and all that leads to game sales. So,
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. So that data is there. So I would highly recommend reading that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anyone else? Any final?
One real quick question I had, I guess, I've never streamed anything before, but I guess I'm wondering, from a streamer's point of view, is there a big advantage to having streaming integrated in the game client itself versus using whatever third-party or external tools they would use to stream the game?
If you use external tools, it's always more. You can add more things always. You're less limited than if you were integrated inside the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's harder to set up, but you have way more what's the word, like kind of control.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. So if you look at Superfight, they built it themselves inside of their client, right? Just to make it an easy, simple integration, right? They wanted it to be like click and go. Like, I don't want to deal with setting up OBS and setting up overlays and all that. But there's no control, right? It's literally just like I'm sending a broadcast, it's accessing my webcam, sending the broadcast directly to, directly to Twitch, and that's all you get, right? And so there is lowering that bar of friction. But for most like large like broadcasters, like they already have OBS set up and all that, and they want that control. So I think that it depends on, how many, like, do you want a massive amount of people streaming your game that have like 1 or 0 viewers? Do you want to go for like the mid-level like size who will also probably have OBS, or do you want to go for large streamers? Like, there's a decision-making process inside of that as well. So.
I mean, follow-up question to that.
Sure.
What was the game you just mentioned?
Superfight?
Superfight.
Yeah.
So they built in Twitch integration right into it, so they could stream right from there.
Correct.
I think Planetary Annihilation is the same thing.
Okay.
And I think literally they pulled that.
Yeah. Minecraft is the same.
So with Fight, whatever it is,
Yep.
did they, and they, or maybe only they can answer this, but like, do they see a large number of players use that integration versus like large streamers who want to have that kind of control? They're definitely going to use OBS for something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the long question is like, did they get benefit out of doing that direct integration? But maybe you can answer like, what was the kind of split on users?
I don't know the split on users. I do know that they were smart in how they implemented it. They said, okay, you can connect directly to your Steam's friend list. So if I'm a streamer, I can immediately say, because it's a 4-player game, right? Up to 6-player, I believe. So 3 on each side or 2 on each side. Most often you see 2 on each side. And so what they said is, we're going to tie in our streaming to immediately connecting you with someone from your Steam's friends list, right? And so you just say, hey, I want to stream against this person. It brings you right in. And so they made it a part of the like experience of the game. That way that they could say, I mean, you could also do it without that, but they made it as part of the like social side of it, which is what their game is centered around. It's like a Cards Against Humanity type of game, right? And so they made it part of that experience to make it compelling to use their integration.
Cool.
So they did. They were smart in how they tied it together with like the social aspect of Steam, for example, and made it very easy there. Yeah. Perfect.
Awesome. Well, I guess that's probably it. So thanks again to Dallas and Michael. And thanks everyone for coming out. Feel free to hang out for a while longer, have more food and drinks if there's any left. Obviously, thanks so much to Twitch for sponsoring once again. And as far as hiring is concerned, if anyone's interested in the open positions you guys have, I guess who should they should speak to? And what is your name?
Yeah, Kathy.
Kathy. Okay,
Yep.
so speak to her.
Yeah, absolutely.
So okay, thanks, and keep an eye out for next month's event, and we'll announce it soon. So.
Yeah, that was great. It was awesome. I was like, oh, you have to give humor. I don't have humor. Mine is dry subject matter.
Well, mine's dry too, but it's self-deprecating. That's what everyone says.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always have to like balance that of like, do I do self-deprecating thing because I'm representing a company that isn't just.
Well, we've had
Question for you.
Sure.
Some of the tech directors exist in my studio here in town.
Yep. I'm so excited about your game. I give you money. Yeah, I can't wait. Sorry, I'm super stoked. But
That's great.
yeah,
That's good to hear.
yeah, absolutely. So I saw them at PAX Prime. I think it was PAX Prime or maybe even TwitchCon. I was like, oh my god, I can't wait. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so
thanks so
working on
much.
that. We've got some other projects we're kind of thinking about doing,
Sure.
trying to figure out. So do you guys do something where we can like talk to someone and say, how could we do what Twitch integration would make sense for us? Like for example, on Metal Chasers, it doesn't sound like a video integration would make much sense for us.
You know, I ordered 400
one guy
single-player
everything I go
Chinese
through
starters.
like that.
Yeah.
ways that we design the game. But it's already feels like a kind of game where you can stop and say, okay, now do I want to use this ability? So streamers can talk while they're playing it.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, that's where it's a single player game. It seems like multiplayer games maybe work better.
Sure.
Into sales.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It could go. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're those guys. Like, you would talk to us directly. We're on integration success, and also Travis is where he is. He's an integration background. Yeah, he's an integration success engineer. So you could chat with us about like technical integration stuff and all that. And then we also have the flip side of that is like the more business side of it, like what makes a good integration. So we can help you with that sort of stuff. Like, we're the right people to talk to. Yeah.
And then I guess, so one of the games we're thinking about doing are very kind of Twitch integration heavy, or sure. If you want to have features where people are voting in the channel and affecting what's happening in the game, does that mean that so people can still be using like OBS or something to stream the game, or would they need to be logging in through our game client to stream it?
Yeah, you can use OBS.
Okay, so they can still use OBS.
It's up to you. You can do both. It, like literally, it doesn't matter. Like. To stream to Twitch, you need to connect to an RTMP system, right? You have to connect to Twitch RTMP system, deliver video frames, and sync audio frames. That's the only requirement. If you do that from game or from OBS, it really doesn't matter. All of like the other integration things, like tying in the chat, and like we're gonna have like features coming out this year that are gonna allow game developers to interact more directly with video and with the channel page to like receive signals in a closer manner. And then we're also trying to reduce the delay from the time a broadcaster waves his hand to the time a viewer sees it. Yeah. And so like, you know, and you look at, let's say Telltale, right? Like, you know, very, very much like, you know, hey, we make a choice now, we make a choice now, we make a choice now. The game's entirely different depending on the choices that you make. You know, that round trip time of like 20 to 30 seconds out to the viewer and then like, you know, a second or two back, like that affects the sort of games that you can fit into that possibility space. We're looking at reducing that as well. But yeah, like you don't have to have a Twitch streaming integration to make it work. Although we do have that, we can stream from like EA Origins. You can like literally stream directly. And if that's interesting to you, like we'll probably provide tools over the next year to make that super easy. But that's, I don't think, core to if you're building a game loop. Like it doesn't matter if they stream from OBS or from your game. Really, the important point is that they're streaming something that the audience can somehow participate
and understand. I think that's the big part.
Yeah, and understand.
And this is a really low-level question, but from the programmers, this is to me like, so there's actually like typing in their username and password, or what, in the game client?
So usually what we do is we'll present an HTML5 layer. You embed our login thing is that, and then you'll get a code. You'll get a code, and then you can exchange that for an OAuth.
So we need like a web browser.
Right now, I'm trying to figure out a way to not make that true. To have like for example a C++ SDK that has a pretty standard like thing that you render and you know the size of it. You can pass it size parameters and all of that. I'm a little ways off from that. So until I get to that point, yes, you have to have some like a WebKit or Chromium or something in your game. You have to present it. You'll have to type in a username and password, or you can make them do it on your website.
I was just going to say that.
So you account associate on your website, and then in game you would already have that OAuth token because you would know the account from how they logged into in-game. That's kind of a hacky way, right? It's an extra step, and you're going to lose people in that funnel, but it is a possibility right now.
Yeah. So like if Bungie actually has this, like where Bungie you can go and you can log into your Bungie.net and you say, oh, I just want to add Twitch, and then they just log in, they do the OAuth exchange there, and then in game they can.
In game you never log in.
Exactly. They already know. Yes.
They already know what you are.
They know your Twitch account. Everything. Yeah, I saw your shirt and I was like, I wonder if he works for Airships. I remember. Thank you so much. Yeah, you and Joe. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Christopher, there's my business
I'm out
card.
with
JT.
Yeah.
I'm
Dallas.
the Director of Integration Success. Kathy Astromov is back there. She's our Vice President of Developer Success as well.
That's all you're asking.
The Developer Success Engineering branch is Kathy and I. We're in San Francisco. We have some people that work on other Twitch systems in Seattle, so we're a pretty distributed team.
I'm here. I live south of
Dallas is right here.
You work at home? I do. I work from home and sometimes go to the office. Like we have an office here on First. So yeah, so there are about 8 of us, 8 or 9 of us that have a little office just off First. Monroe. Yeah, First and Monroe. And so yeah, but I work from home. I sometimes just float. Yeah. Perfect. Oh, it's great to meet you.
It's great to meet you. Yeah, please send an email.
Yeah.
Happy to give you what we want is that development. That's why we do this thing. We get that developer feedback so we're building the right experience. Like I don't want to spend 6 months building the right thing.
So for us, we're using Unreal or Unity for this game. Why don't we use Unreal for our next game?
I mean, ultimately, like we should be for like the thing that I want to do. Provide SDKs for Unreal and Unity both, right? Like, so like just make it really easy.
Yeah, we could do a provide for either them type of.
Yeah, exactly.
Like publish an API or just do like C# call.
Yeah, exactly.
That's brand vision. So that sort of feedback will allow us, like collecting that feedback allows us to drive the product. So, please do reach out.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Good talk, man. Thank you so much. Nice, everybody seems interested and engaged.
Hey, how's it going? Dallas. Yeah.
You were on the conference, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was
I see your picture so much on mail, but I was wait, I actually did see you.
Yeah.
Karen had to bounce. I don't know. She came and she like left. I don't know if it was like what was that?
So when she was entitling the when the game wasn't ingested, they were sitting there clicking the button, and this was triggering an alarm that escalated it up to step 2. And what happens, I had seen in my Amazon email this issue go step 2, all this traffic about it, and she hadn't even seen that. So when she talked about it, I'm like, oh, that's what all that email was about.
Oh no! Bummer.
Yeah, you can entitle before ingest.
Yeah.
Well, for what game was it?
I don't know. She had done it. There was one where there was a particular guy that kept clicking the button over and over. That's what caused it. But she had entitled 15 people across 3 games. So she was trying to like head them all off.
Yeah. It's like you cut one head off, 2 more springs up, right?
Find that process a little bit. Anyway, she must have ran off to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I should have plugged our bags and shirts and everything in the back.
Yes, you forgot the swag. Katie lovingly packed all of that sort of stuff. Now it's for well,
we could do another talk here.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying what they're through that. Sorry you missed Dallas' talk. You're gonna be in the office tomorrow? You can come down?
I was just thinking when they're talking about what makes a good streaming game.
Right.
Because there's always this conversation, what makes a good esports game?
Yes.
It's like, stop trying to make a good esports game.
Exactly.
Make a good game that people want to see.
Yeah. TLDR make a great game. Yeah. And I felt bad saying like Twitch integration is gonna make or break your game. It's true. Like if you make a great game that people can understand as a spectator, like it will be successful. That's what happened with Dead by Daylight. Like they came out of nowhere. People play their game, right? Like there you go. Like
It's about the game. It's always going to be about the game. I like the way that you put it forward.
right, yeah. Yeah, I mean that's what it is. Like it's not the
Can't make a bad game.
right.
Never seen a bad game that made good by decision.
Yeah, exactly.
So you were on Connect Star Wars.
I did.
So I was on the Connect team.
Oh really?
So
Wow.
where were you?
Oh,
At Microsoft.
Yeah.
So the thing that comes to mind with the Twitch stuff, up until the part where you plug the really crappy game, is we used to have that 10 up. It's as much fun to watch as it is to play.
Right.
I think that's like the key thing.
Yeah.
And some of those early Connect titles do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think some of that applies here too, right? I mean, there are games that are fun to play, that wouldn't be fun to play, and there are games that are both, right?
Yeah.
And that's really the sweet spot, right? This Venn diagram.
Yeah, it's right there in the middle.
And I think I would have to think about this one. I think it's the same Venn diagram. I think it is actually the same Venn diagram as esports.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
I mean, it's sometimes because people have to get some excitement out of their show. I don't know that that's universally true. It's exactly
There's
the same.
probably a little slice of that
Yeah.
circle. I don't think that circle's entirely overlapping. I think there is something that's not fun to play and not fun to watch, but is an okay esport.
Sure. I mean, yeah.
How would you get pickled the bucket?
A not fun to play game and not fun to watch game that wasn't esports. Ubisoft made a game like this. It was some sort of what was that game? It was a Quake railgun simulator. It happened in like 2012. Like they dumped like $50 million into their esports program. Do you remember this game?
Yeah.
So it wasn't fun to play. It was not fun to watch, but it was a legitimate esport because they just put money. They just didn't play it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So like there's a little. It's not a huge slice because like that circle actually can be pushed down a little bit. It's not entirely overlapping.
Absolutely. So interesting. Yeah.
What was that? It was remember that EA like point shooter? It was like a railgun shooter. Like it had round. It was like touted as a big esport. They did it IPL season 2 and 3. No, not EA. Ubisoft.
2013.
Yeah, 2012.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
It was about monetizing games.
I don't remember. It was had a stupid fucking name too.
Right. Yeah. It was just poor all around. Like. Yeah. But it was like designed to.
He was saying the number one way to make money.
Not Rainbow Six Siege.
No.
Yeah. They've actually done a fairly good job like saving that game. Like it started out real poor, and they did a good job playing.
Oh, well, when it was that, The Division, which similar story, right?
I was so hyped for that game, and I bought it. I bought the tie-in book, which was brilliant. I read it at like during my wedding trip, as a matter of fact. And everybody that came for my wedding was the person. Like we were all trying to solve the puzzles. It was great, but my God, did they squander all of the cool like story they put behind it. They squandered like all the mechanics. Like, oh man.
Did you see the sort of long form commercial they had on Amazon streaming? They probably had it on Netflix too, but it was about 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was.
Yes.
I thought that was a brilliant setup for that game.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it was. And then what they ended up doing is like the latest patch, the 1.6 patch. They basically said, "Oh, here's our cadence. Here are all the things we're going to release," and they got to the point where the community was so pissed off that they said, "We're postponing." That's it.
I'm just looking at a list of that.
That's it. Shootmania Storm.
That's right.
It was not fun to play. It was not fun to watch, but it was a goddamn esport. Like they had like hundreds of thousands of dollars. They were at IPL season like 2 or 3 or something like that. They just dumped so much money into the esport. They just tried to shove it down. So it is possible. Just wanted to be like, I've been there. I've seen it.
The other day when
Do you guys put a lot of like
Microsoft canceled Scalebound or whatever.
Yes.
And the internet cried for a while.
Right,
Like, oh, how could they do this? This was their. And I'm like, okay, well, what did they? Some people the plug on the game. It must have
just
like
terrible.
irredeemably sucked.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
When you look at what gets
We
released,
put out Connect Star Wars.
I know.
They had a dance mode.
That wouldn't have helped. That wouldn't have helped.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting because so Connect Star Wars, we were spending $1 million a month on production. It was a lot. We had every available outsource art and all those companies working on it. Like it was ridiculous. The main developer was in Dallas, Texas, which is hilarious when I started because Dallas tester. I filed a bug and said, hey, the audio's busted. This is 7.1.
One of the testers in Dallas found it.
They went. No, they sent an email and said somebody has gone on to information agreeing to fake this account and filed 7.1 bugs. And my executive producer, he goes, "We're gonna find." He was a very stoic German man. He was like, "We're gonna find this person." He knew it was me. He was like, "We're gonna find this person." For weeks, he strung them along, and then I redid their. We had to localize into 27 languages, like voices. Their engine, which they made, only supported one English, and so I redid their localization system. Weird. Imagine that.
Nobody's ever done that.
And so I came up, and so I called this meeting, and we get into the meeting. I go, "Hey, I'm Dallas. Nice to meet you." And there's like this awkward silence, and I was like, "Yes, I'm a real boy." And they were like, "Holy shit, Jorg has been stringing us along for weeks, and they're gonna find you." And I was like, "Dude, you don't have any audio in the game, and I'm responsible for audio. Like, hello, it's definitely a Step 1 Prime 1 bug." Like, it was just super. They went up there, and we acquired all their talent. So I think some of the things happened to scale down because I mean they didn't go under. What happened with this company was they didn't meet any of their milestones, and so we didn't pay them because they were meeting milestones. And then when they met milestones, we could pay them, but like they were like so behind. Right? And so
Again, very unusual.
yeah, exactly.
No
So
game company's ever been started to death by me finishing milestones.
what I loved was the entire company was like nepotism central. Like the CEO made his wife CTO, and she had no technical background whatsoever.
Of course.
And then his brother was the chief of design.
Yeah, that's
What are you doing?
You sent his own wife up for failure, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Maybe they like her.
They've been around for a long time. They were around for a long time too. Like they existed for like 13 or 18 years, and then they finally went under after this fuck up because they fucked up a bunch of times in succession. But it was just it blew my mind because she and I went at it about a bug. Like I was responsible for pod racing mode, which was literally the only good mode in that game. And so I had all that, and I was like, look, you're sharing assets between Jedi mode and pod racing mode. And so whenever I'm in a pod racer that has 10,000 health, and I use the power up that is used for Jedi training, it's literally doing like half a damage. And so I can never kill anybody, so this achievement is impossible, and I can't kill anybody. Like, you're in pod racing, and like you're supposed to be like going up against, whatever his name is.
Sebulba.
Yeah, Sebulba and all this. Like, I'm supposed to be killing these
I feel dirty that I know that.
yeah. And so, and she was like, no, that's not the problem. I was like, I guarantee you it's a problem. I was like, this happened on another asset. Sure enough, they were sharing it. So it was only doing one damage to the Jedi because it's during training. And you deflect, right? But it's the same model, and they tied the same, and they had to duplicate the asset. So they had to duplicate the asset. So every time there was any difference between modes, there are 4 modes in this game, and they wanted to reuse them. Yes! And I was like, yes! I can't believe it. I was just blown away. I mean, I feel dirty that it's the only game that I'm in credits for. I'm in no credits of any other game. I was like, no, like, that can't be not. Yeah.
This guy, there's a book that I like, and I can never remember his name. The guy who wrote Scott Rogers.
Yeah.
Level Up. I saw him at GDC ages ago, and he was doing this talk. Everything I know about level design, I learned at Disneyland. Right. And he started talking about how he had been an art guy, made sprites. Came through that, and he said the first thing I designed the levels for was Pac-Man. And I was like, wow. He's like admitting that in front of everybody.
Right.
That's a horrible game.
Hang on. know. I admit with shame that I worked on that game. Then I'll say, but I incubated HoloLens. That's pretty fucking cool. And I worked on the SDK for that. Like,
Is it like Fragments? That's what it's called, right?
I haven't played Fragments yet. Yeah.
That's freaking awesome.
That was like, we had what we called wacky weeks whenever we were, so
Like hackathon.
yeah, exactly. And that was one of the things that came out of that was Fragments.
So when you're wearing the headset, right? There's this AI that's kind of the narrator and helper and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're in your room and there's a couch or a chair, the guy just like sits down on the couch and is talking to you. If there's not, he's just talking to you.
Yep.
But in this game, it's super cool. Like when you look down, the floor changes to this open blank and all this stuff. And the problem with it is the game is actually really good and immersive, but the field of view really kills the immersion in it, right? It's a really interesting game. Yeah. But the amount of work that must go into dealing with augmented reality.
That was the hardest thing. That was the hardest thing because in real time we were creating meshes of everything in the room. And so we were creating meshes of every single space. Like that made it hard. Like that was the hardest thing to do. Because like then you would get these weird, what we call the Starbucks bug. So we also use like waypoints. Can we take it off? Alright. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. So they call it the Starbucks bug because we had a Starbucks machine on each side of the building, and it uses landmarks to figure out where it's going. And so, like that Capital Factory side, for example. And so I looked at this, and then I walked around, and like I was mapping the hall, and then I walked back to the other Starbucks machine, and the mesh went. Because it thought it was the same Starbucks machine, and so it put the took the vertices and went bloop, and then it crashed because it was using nothing but what does this look like in OCR? And so then I was like, why don't we just use what is the closest Wi-Fi access? And so we started doing that. And so now what it would do is it would just ping the Wi-Fi access. It didn't have to connect. It just had to say, hey, what's your MAC? What's your MAC address? And then it would give that back, and then we say, oh wait, this is your MAC address. This is a full floor. And that's how we solved it. But it was just like, we called it the Starbucks problem because I was just like, I mean, this thing was gigantic whenever I was working on it. It was like, the wires were this big coming out the back, and there was literally on a cart, I had someone behind me on a cart pushing the desktop computer. And by the time I left Microsoft, it was, we had a hiking backpack that had a laptop strapped to it. And it was just like, there. And I was like, holy shit, like, in a year and a half, we went from, like, whenever ballers would come to play it, you're like surefing around this motherfucker who's just like, doing going anywhere. Yeah, and he has like sweat. Yeah. Yeah, so it's that huge bit of thing. And we had this, so the first experience we built was, they mapped the room, and so this wall, I would show like holes in the wall, and like aliens run through the walls. And so that's what he played, so he's like, oh,
that's the shooting one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I played that one too.
Yeah, he's like, oh, God, I was like, don't do that.
Very this friend of mine, he's a hardware engineer, and he was showing it to me, and he had written out a game in Unity, right? But so we come over and we're at his house, and he's like, well, there's a bunch of games on it, but I'm going to show you the one. I want to show you the one I made first. And his wife goes, Chad, don't show him that dumb thing you made. Show him the real. He wants to see the real stuff. And I'm just like, oh man, wow, yeah, cut you out that knees. Wow. Yeah. When I saw it, this must have been like November, October. The only problem with it was like the UX for the for like loading the game and all. That was all clearly prototype, wrapped together.
Absolutely.
Windows Explorer, basically, kind of thing. So.
Well, yeah, like whenever we initially made it, it was its own OS, and then they, right as I was leaving, they were like, nope, we're gonna do this Windows Core, Win kernel. I get it, but they also, at that point, stupidly only wanted it to work on Windows phones. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? No, it should work on every phone. But then they decided to do it not tethered to a phone, right? So like, yeah, I was like, oh, thank God. Like, but does it still do the audio reduction? Do you know how it does that?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of when I had it on. I don't. It didn't.
Did you have
headphones?
Okay. Yeah, because the whole like lofty idea was that like you would have the bone conduction through the temples, and then it would just like recreate the sound that way, so no one else could hear it, but it would, you would hear it. So it's all highly theoretical. They had a working prototype, but the working prototype was like tens of thousands of dollars, and they were like, we're gonna be able to get it down to like
$1.99 on one chip.
Yeah, I was so blown away because when I was there, they were like, oh, we're gonna have it on my 2016. I was like, you're full of shit. And I was like, then they hit it. And I was like, yeah, but it's $3. But you met your goal. And I have a lot of friends that still work on it. But yeah. So. Oh my. Do people stream any VR games? People are streaming Resident Evil 7 VR like now because it just came out today. Yeah. So like, it's a weird experience for viewers because like, speaking to the problem of like not interacting, like you're not interacting with the chat text. Right. Like, yeah, there are some add-ons that will like, for Oculus, I think, that will render, but like it's still just, you're like, oh, I gotta read this, hold on, and you're in the middle of like acting, right. Acting as zombie entertainment of watching the person play the game, reacting, like, especially Resident Evil, like, holy shit, scary.
So people are, the streamer obviously is wearing VR headset. Is it being streamed through VR?
No, we don't know. We haven't. So we had that conversation.
Those people, some people do their headset.
Because you're not doing the writing, right?
Yeah, try to make compute.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Like people have asked us, and we get it. Like people ask us like weekly, like, oh yeah, like it was like, I don't know, like no one's really figured it out, and it doesn't seem worth the investment right now because like it's such a small slice. So
yeah, I think you would have the nausea problem.
Right. I think you'd have to capture the 360, and then the person who's the viewer can look around, but it's not controlling the motion of where the person's going. It's just the only way. I feel like there'd be a lot of data to switch over the wire, right? Like, absolutely. Yeah, because like right now, a lot of people stream at 3500 because that's the most. Anything above that, people start dropping off. Anything below that, it kind of looks like shit. But like, you get I'm novice, so 3500 what? kbps. So like this so basically, that's our max. And like YouTube's max is like 10 megabits, so 10,000. Yeah. You're like, oh, why don't you up this? I'm like, because most people don't have the internet to watch at 10 megabits. Sure. And you don't want to alienate your audience. Also, Google. Right. Yeah. So it's like we could do it. It's just that it's going to be a real shit.
They have it because they want 4K content.
Yeah. And they just want to say we're better than yeah, you're not going to go higher than whatever the resolution of the game is, right? Or, I mean, unless theirs is like an inset and then their is larger.
Bit rate.
Right. Yeah. So not resolution, but bit rate. So.
But they have that pipe in their architecture because they use 4K.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I could totally like have a gigabit Google connection. I could probably stream a few megabits at least. It's like it's just it's not worth it for most games. High motion games, I understand that you want a higher bit rate because it helps smooth installation, but beyond that, it's I don't know. Like playing Hearthstone, you need like 2,000. Like 2 megabits. I think Trump streams like 1750 because then he gets a shitload of people because all the Europeans who don't have like crazy ass internet connections can load his stream, and they load like that. They look good because the low motion game. So smart. A lot of people say say whenever you first start streaming that you should max out at 2,500 because like it gets your viewer base of people, and then go up to 3,500 once you have an established. Like it's really interesting, like the timing. They're like, once you have X number, you should go here. Like, wow. Yeah, it's weird. It's such a strange thing.
Is there an Alexa skill for Twitch?
I
I was thinking the other day it would be cool to make one that was sort of like basically Alexa help you find a stream to watch.
Right.
And basically just promote
That would be
stuff up through there.
They're fun to write. So I wrote the prototype for Twitter, and then it went into legal for a year. Because I was working with BB at Amazon, the Alexa people there, because they were like, we want Twitter on it. Great, I'll write it. No problem. Here it is. Because originally they were thinking like, oh, you can tweet from it, you can read your DMs, and I'm like, these are security issues.
Right, absolutely.
No, not tweet, not read DMs.
Yeah. Tweet, insert really racist tirade here.
Right, exactly. They had the prototype.
That's true. I guess I don't need to add that, right?
But then it was a whole legal issue. It's like, who owns the code? Because Twitter didn't want to post it because they didn't know if it was going to be a thing. And I was like, put it on Lambda. Like, you have so many millions of like calls you can make, but they still want to do it. So Amazon's posting it, but because of that, they couldn't use my code. So someone had to like look at my code
and be inspired by it.
And be inspired by my code, rewrote it, and then that became the official. Like,
bummer. That's kind of a bummer though.
But they're a lot of fun to write.
Yeah, they one of the guys on my team in App Store was working on with Citibank, I think, or Wells Fargo, one of them. They wanted to do an Alexa app where you could like do transfers and payments from Alexa, and they explored this and the bank was like super dead set on doing this. And we're like, that's not really something you're gonna be able to do, right? You can get to a point of hey, there's a message on your connected phone, right?
Sure.
For you to say yes, I want to do this, right? But there's no way that you're just going to say, oh yeah, transfer $1,000. Yeah. No way.
Wow. That's great. Or like stock trades, right? That kind of stuff. So like, day traders just yelling at their Alexa for hours, right? no, sell this. It sounds like an auction.
Yeah, right.
Alexa's like, I did not understand.
Put two of them together.
Yeah. Right.
Two Alexas together.
Takes down the Dow.
Hey, good. How you doing?
Just like Google Homes talking to each other. Man, I should have pinned for the fucking swag bags. I didn't think about it. Like, hey, everyone stop and get a swag bag on your way out.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it.
It's okay.
Long way.
Is there anything you would like to do while I have a camera? I mean, I don't have like, I normally have a handheld microphone and stuff.
Difficult connection.
Yeah, if you wanted to get any
Well, I think it's okay. Like, I mean, I think it's alright. Okay, yeah. Don't appreciate it. No problem.
What's the exactly. It's the one thing we got going. Play it and doing the whole show. Although it didn't, if you heard about my so like we had tornadoes like all over the way. So like I'm at the airport, and it's like I know it's gonna get fitting, like and then it got delayed by the pilot was up against together. It's all hours. I tried to sort of got hit with I was like, go first thing. It's like so we're on, we're ready to go. As I really going to my phone, like doing he told 12.
Like, what do you guys do? You actually publish it? Where do you get your graphics? You actually pay it?
We face the runway, so it's 12:43.
Oh, you do all the art?
And then he says, we're live and animation for like 120 seconds.
So,
and then they also do some
right. Because they couldn't have a gate for it.
Back to everybody.
Yeah.
It's like,
so when I came back from San Francisco on Friday, I get to the airport, plenty of time. I go up to the flight that leaves before me, and I said, hey, can I go standby? What's your standby look like? Oh, our standby looks good. You didn't check a bag, did you? Yeah. Oh, you can't go standby if you check a bag. And I'm like, I kind of do that all the time. This very airline, at this airport. Is this a new thing? No, it's always been. Okay, so Wait for my flight. Everybody gets off my flight. Now the door's broken. They can't close the door. So delay. Now the pilot runs out of time. Right? Maintenance is still working on the door. There's no pilots to be had. Right? And then they're like, okay, well, we're going to put you on a Virgin America flight. Here's a ticket. Trudge. Other terminal, in San Francisco. They get over there. They're like, what? We don't take Delta tickets. They know that. You got to go back to them. We can't fly over. Go all the way back there. Like, oh yeah, we screwed up. Here's a ticket for an Alaska flight. You have to go out through security, take the train to the international terminal because it's Alaska, and get back on. And I said, okay, but I checked this out. What's going to happen to that? And they're like, oh, we'll take care of that, right? So they're on the computer, right? We're transferring the bag. It hasn't been loaded on the plane yet. It'll be there. And I really don't care because I'm going home, right? So I get off, surprising no one, no bag.